Hey, okay, I'm going to speak about something here which I care a lot about, and which is a contentious subject, but I feel I need to speak about it. It's about the subject of human rights, and this is in the context of a story that I've just read. Basically, a man from New Zealand has been sentenced to 2.5 years custodial sentence in a Burmese jail because he apparently insulted Buddhism. Apparently what the guy had done was made a poster depicting Buddha as a way to sell drinks. Now, I want people to listen very carefully to the things I have to say in this video before rushing to judgment. First of all, I'm not condoning what the guy done. I think it was insensitive and it was a stupid thing to do. But from what I gather, he apologised, and yeah, 2.5 years in jail for this. What I notice when these sort of cases come about is that there are always a lot of people, both from the country in question and also a lot of other Westerners, who justify it by saying when in country A you have to obey the laws of the land. Now, I agree with that. I think if you're in another country you should obey the laws of the land. But what really bothers me is when people then condone the sentence, whatever it is. There is something called the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and that explicitly states that all human beings should have such rights as freedom of expression. Now, I believe that countries that do continue to have ridiculously harsh laws should be scrutinised and criticised. Burma has moderately improved in recent years, it has to be said. I mean, the idea of a Westerner doing any sort of business 5-6 years ago would probably be unthinkable, so it has to be acknowledged that it has improved. But the issue I have a real problem with is this idea that sovereignty alone is an excuse to do anything. Because basically, if people want to really make an argument that laws should be unquestionable, then technically speaking, any country could make any law at once, and outsiders couldn't say a word. Now, to me, that is invalid. Why? Because we live in an interconnected world. And this is not a case that I'm disrespecting sovereignty. Every nation does have a right to set its own laws, but what I'm arguing is that when those laws violate basic human rights, they should be challenged. Now, this is by no means the worst example. A much more extreme example would be the case of Raif Badawi in Saudi Arabia, who's being lashed 1,000 times. It's an ongoing case, lashed 1,000 times for supposedly insulting Islam because of a blog he put. And he's a Saudi national. So this isn't a case that I'm biased in favour of Westerners, and this is a point I'd like to stress. To me, universal human rights is precisely that. It's not that I only care when Westerners are involved. I would be saying exactly the same thing if it was a Burmese man who was facing a jail sentence for that reason. You know, the guy was wrong to do it, and he should have done his homework on the sensitivities of the land. I will say one thing: if Buddhism is that sensitive, then that's pathetic. And I don't actually care that much about insulting religion. I've never I've never expressed hatred for religious people, but I have always staunchly argued that religion itself isn't above criticism, and it appears that Islam is therefore not alone in sensitivity. I don't know if this is a religious law or if it's something the government of Burma is just using. I don't know. But it bothers me that so many people are so quick to defend this, and sort of smugly saying, well, the man deserves it because he didn't do his cultural research. Well, look, he should have done that. Yeah, I get that. But 2.5 years is far too harsh. I don't understand how anyone could not see that. And it's like this issue about sovereignty, this issue of, oh well, it's their country, they could do what they want. That's a phony argument, in my opinion. It's a very phony argument, because under that logic, a country could do anything. If you want to take that argument to extremes, and I'm not comparing this, but I'm just saying if you really want to take that argument to extremes, technically a country could commit genocide within its borders, and the rest of the world would just have to shut up, because hey, it's their country. Laws, there are some laws in this world which frankly are barbaric, and that was just an example I used, but there's much worse things than that. I'll quote the lèse-majesté laws in Thailand, and that is up to 15 years in jail, sometimes longer, for supposed insult to majesty. Those laws are being used as a political weapon, and I know there are many, many Thai people who agree with me on this. There's many others that would want my guts for saying that, but I couldn't care less. I'm not breaking the laws because I'm not in Thailand, but I'm using that as an example. Personally, I would be very careful in another country, especially Asian countries, because I've noticed Asian countries particularly tend to have absurd laws, and so-called Asian values are, in my view, used as an excuse to trample basic liberty. Now, I'm not saying that liberty should be used as a way to do reckless things. What this man done was stupid. I'm not disputing that, and he should face some sort of consequence. But from what I understand, he's already apologised. 2.5 years is ridiculous. And it's by no means the most extreme example. Like I say, in Thailand it's 15 years for insulting monarchy. But what I'm getting at here is it's not valid to say that because a country has a sovereign legal system, then that legal system should be beyond reproach. I mean, governments should advise their citizens to behave abroad and to respect the laws of whatever country they're visiting. And personally speaking, I would make sure that I know the laws of a country and I wouldn't do reckless things. But what bothers me is people seem to be blinded by legal code rather than basic humanity. And my question to anyone justifying that sort of thing is, well, put yourself in his shoes and ask yourself this question: have you never made a mistake in your life? And if you make a mistake, do you think that you should go through that sort of ordeal because of a mistake? I mean, it's not like this guy went out of his way to insult people because he thought it would be a laugh. He clearly made a foolish mistake. And it angers me that so many people think it's okay. And I don't think this is necessarily a biased Western thing, because I know there's many people all over the world who would agree with my position on this. I have had a lot of dialogue with people, I'll use Thailand as an example, who staunchly agree with my views on lèse-majesté. Thai nationals who hate that law, who think it's barbaric, which it is, and who have shown me a lot of support for it. Of course, I've had the counter-argument, and I've had a lot of vitriol, but I'm by no means unique in this. So basically, what I would say in the final analysis is, yes, countries have a sovereign right to set their own laws, and yes, outsiders and nationals for that matter probably should obey those laws. But just because something is a law shouldn't mean that it's above scrutiny, and shouldn't mean that it's above any sort of reproach. People should obey it, partly for practical reasons, but just because something's a law doesn't mean it's above reproach. And just because it's a law in a particular country does not mean that country is suddenly immune to criticism. That was just one example I gave. There's much, much worse examples. But to me, 2.5 years for a poster that upsets some people's sensitivities is brutal. It's far too harsh. And Burmese prisons aren't exactly known for decent living conditions. I mean, what if this guy gets seriously sick inside? Are the guards going to treat him? You know, there's all sorts of scenarios that could happen. So yeah, I have a problem with it. And forgive me for being compassionate. I just cannot understand people who casually say, oh, well, it's their laws, they can do what they want. I think there also needs to be a point when there is a universal, maybe an update on the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, because pretty much every country violates it. And I'm sick and tired of sovereignty being used as an excuse by countries all over the world, including some Western countries I might add, including the United States, um, including my country. My country's far from perfect, regarding workfare, for example. No country has a right to do what it wants. And I do think there should be a universal code regarding human rights, maybe an updated version of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Granted, it would be very, very difficult to enforce that, but at least it would be something whereby countries couldn't always use that sovereignty excuse. I appreciate that each country has a different situation. Um, and certainly it's more complicated in countries where there might be civil war going on and maybe exceptional laws are needed. I do understand that. But it just bothers me when people are so desensitized and they cannot see that certain punishments are basically just inhumane. It really bothers me. Let me know your thoughts.